what is the secret to success? And he said, passion.
When you really love something and you want to dive into it, then you just figure everything out as soon as you can.
Today's episode is all about following your passion. If you are passionate in what you do, you will undoubtedly become successful at it.
Welcome to the glamorous grind, where grit meets glamour and ambition always finds a spotlight.
Seems like everything you do, you just put your heart and soul into it.
That's very important to me, to be able to tell the client's story.
We're sitting down with the brilliant and bold Eric Ganci, a drummer, a former DIY trial attorney with 72 trials under his belt, and now a personal injury powerhouse focusing on brain injury cases.
I have a passion for that. I have a family member who unfortunately went through a really gnarly brain injury.
Maybe you've thought of switching lanes or following multiple passions, but weren't ready to take the leap. This episode might just have some answers for you.
All right, Eric, well, thanks for being here and wearing a beautiful bow tie. What's the secret behind that?
Behind the bow ties?
Yes.
It was it was born out of stress. I thought, this is such a stressful job, as you both know, as fantastic lawyers and trial lawyers. And I was doing a necktie for, the first 9 or 10 years. And I thought, I want to just enjoy something that's just a little bit different. So I started doing the bow ties. And then, but I wasn't going to do clip-on bow ties because people ask me all the time, like, oh, is that tied? Which I think is a ridiculous question to be asked. So I just started wearing them. It took me years before I would wear them before a jury. But I really enjoy all the various bow ties that I have. And even my mom has made me some bow ties, which is super cool. So I just something I really enjoy.
And when I saw your bow ties, my first thought was like, that is very brave. That's a brave fashion statement, right? Because like not everyone could pull that off. And to me, it immediately signaled that you came off as like so confident, so knowing what you're doing, and you wore that bow tie with such pride. It told me immediately that you are not afraid to be your authentic self, no matter what anyone thinks.
Yeah.
And my impression, not that you asked for it, was, wow, that bow tie is big. Because normally big bow ties are smaller. Like I've seen some judges wear them and others, but yours like stands out and it's perfectly done. So I wouldn't be surprised why people think it's pre-made. To me, it's like, go big or go home.
Yeah. I think that, especially having done a lot of jury trials, jurors, their BS meters are like really on all the time because they have nothing to do but just sit there and just watch the story unfold and the movie unfold before them. So they do a lot of, like, I've won trials before because the jurors liked my cufflinks. And I was like, what do you think about the facts? They're like, yeah, the facts were fine. We just love your cufflinks. Okay, great. I mean, I won the trial, so that's good. The bow tie thing, it's, I just like it. So, if you can just lean into who you are as a person, then jurors respond well, and other people generally respond well too if you're just being a very true version of yourself. As soon as you're trying to like fake it in some way, shape, or form, people don't like to be around that. But then once you feel comfortable with what you're doing, then it just comes off that way. And it's just something that, I enjoy.
So how many years have you been an attorney now?
16 years. I was a teacher before I became a lawyer. And so then people so many times ask, well, how did you go from teaching to being a lawyer? To which I respond that there's so much that is the law that is teaching. So, like we're teaching our clients, we're teaching judges, we're teaching jurors, we're teaching opposing counsel, we're teaching on this podcast. Like there's so much crossover from teaching to being a lawyer. Plus, I just wanted to like learn more about the world because I was teaching and I was a music band director and I felt very confident in that. But there's just so much more with the law that you just get to learn so much about the world.
After you finished law school, what was your first job?
So right out of law school, I started my own firm. A lot of people told me, that's crazy, you can't do that, you don't know enough. And that is very true for lots of lawyers. It can be a very scary thing to do. When you really love something and you want to dive into it, then you just figure everything out as soon as you can. And so I was, getting on cases, and then I was making money. And then instead of going out and buying, fancy cars and fancy houses and that kind of stuff, I would just keep reinvesting it into myself. And then that allowed me just to keep knowing more and more and more. So I ran my own business for 12 years, doing exclusively DUI cases, DUI defense cases for 12 years.
One of the things that really strikes me about you, and it's very rare to meet, is just constant growth mindset. And I heard this quote actually yesterday, and someone was asked, what is the secret to success? And he said, passion. Said anything else? Nope, just passion. If you are passionate in what you do, you will undoubtedly become successful at it. And then there was another thing I was listening to today, actually, because I'm also like always learning. And it was a podcast about neuroscience. And one of the things they touched on is like, if you're lazy, maybe it's because you don't find purpose in what you do.
Yeah.
Like there is a reason behind everything. And one thing I love about you is like when you find something you love, you just go all in. Now it's time for the audience Q&A. So here's the listener question. I'm a law student who's also a painter. I'm worried I won't be taken seriously if I show that side of myself professionally. Did you ever feel pressure to hide your creative side?
I identify very much as a drummer and as a musician, but that also comes connected with identifying as someone who just cares a lot about being good at something. And that's, I want to be a good drummer and a musician. Anything that I want to do that I really love, I want to learn everything about it, and I want to learn all the foundations about it so then I can then play with the art that comes from the foundation. So I identify very much as someone who cares a lot about foundational stuff and art. What a lot of people don't think about, maybe because they haven't had the experience with it, is that we think lawyers and you think reading lots of books and like needing to know all this information, knowing the law. And then there is being a trial lawyer, which very much is knowing the law and all that kind of stuff. But it's also knowing how to be a storyteller, knowing how to like communicate with people, knowing how to listen a lot. It's knowing how to be like the producer and the director of like a movie or a stage play. Mm-hmm. So this is all gets back to like the foundational stuff that there's an art to all of this that we're doing. But then the more that I can focus on having the foundational stuff, then when I go in and I'm doing a trial, I don't need to worry, hopefully, as much about the foundational, like, am I standing in the right space? Am I talking with a loud enough courtroom voice? And then I know that I'm going to have strong foundations because I've worked on that. So then hopefully it's secondary nature. So then that allows me to then just be more calm, connected with the jurors, and then just allow more space for what the art could happen in the trial. Because there's, and it depends on like, if it's like a short trial, like, 3 to 4 days, I've done lots of those. Is it a longer trial, like a few weeks? And there's like an arc to the trial, and how are people receiving information? There's an art to all of this stuff. So that's where foundation and being a lawyer, like left brain lawyer, right brain lawyer, like how all this stuff comes together.
So, there's obviously a book, Art of War. If it was the art of trial, what would be your top 3 tips?
I do love the art of war very, very much. Be prepared, listen, and the trial is not about you, the lawyer. So many lawyers think that the trial is about the lawyer. And maybe the first 20 trials, I was thinking like, wow, like this is really about me. And that's not the case. Like you were a part of it. You're producing and you're directing the movie, but you need to get out of the way. So the trial's not about you. And as soon as lawyers many times try to interject themselves into like the story, the jurors, like they don't want to hear that. They don't trust lawyers generally for many good reasons, many times. They want to hear like, what's the story that's happening? Like, let's have the witnesses say like what's happening. So that would be the last one.
You now practice personal injury, and you have been doing that 5 years?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you specialize in?
So I specialize in doing brain injury cases. I have a passion for that. I have a family member who unfortunately went through a really gnarly brain injury. And so it's also an emerging science. There's like lots of knowns. There's lots of unknowns with that. So it's a way for me just to try to understand it so I can be present with my family. But it's also a way to understand and give honest information in a trial setting about what's happening with this brain injury. And there's lots. I mean, brain injury is like such a wide range, and it could be like how the person is acting, like what part of their head was hit, what part of the brain is affected. But then it's also like the neuroimaging side of it. Because for an example, like we have MRIs, but then we also have DTIs, which is just another way to like image the brain. And that is a newer, or some people think that it's a newer technology. It's been around for a while, but does that evidence come in as trial? So then there is like the science behind what is DTI, MRIs, and how do we get that in front of a judge for the judge to understand this is what the objective science is behind it, and what side is like, for me, I've seen so many defense lawyers or defense industry people try to skew like what the true science behind of a DTI is. And so then you have to understand what it is so that you can then express it to say like, no, what they're saying is wrong. They're relying on these articles. What the true, information is this, and then be persuasive with that to a judge to let the evidence in and to the jury.
Brain injuries are so scientific. I know when I was working on the defense side, PI, we had a brain injury case, and we really had to learn all of the science behind it. And I always find it astonishing because any other injury you can see. And the brain injury cases are the only injuries where you cannot see them, touch them. They are all internal, and you have to look at a person's behavior and use experts and doctors to assess the extent of the injuries. And the problem with that is, especially in a lawsuit, people can lie. And so it's tough. I mean,
well, it's not. I mean, if you keep going to a doctor and you have memory loss and things get worse normally and become more permanent after a year, it's easier to document. It's just that you need to have documented treatment plan to show how your symptoms develop over time, right?
It's all of these things. It could be all of this stuff. And I've had cases where my client was, where the defense was arguing like, hey, this person's a liar. And I've had cases too where it was the plaintiff. And to be honest, like the plaintiff was trying to like distance themselves from having a brain injury, was not being really honest with themselves about what they had. And the reality with that, which is really sad, is that like this, I'm thinking of one person in particular, just because it's a more recent case, is that this person doesn't want to have to live with a brain injury. Like he understands what he went through as a car crash case and how sad and frustrating it is for him because he was such a high performer at work. And then to know that he's having all these issues now, and he doesn't want to admit that. And so that becomes a piece of the case. And then the defense says he's lying. And that's not always, maybe sometimes there are certainly people that lie, in our industry. There's no shocker. There are people that lie, but sometimes it's just a sad reality of what the person, like what their life is right now. And it is very technical, but then it can also just be so plain and present. And that's where like before and after witnesses on brain injury cases are so important, because you can have all the doctors and the doctors are going to say, various things, but then just having someone that knows them to be like, this is what they were like before, this is what they're like now. Totally different. Lots that goes into that.
There was one thing that I recall learning about, and maybe you know the exact term for it, but it's when a plaintiff, and especially in a brain injury case, is in litigation and is being seen by doctors, right? Because once you put your psychological state at issue, the defense side can come in and have their doctors, interview you and do all of these awful tests. And then the plaintiff starts having exacerbated symptoms. Then you have to have experts from the defense side who are coming and saying these symptoms are actually from the litigation and being a plaintiff and hearing about what a victim they are and not from the brain injury. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. It's a lot. So I'll try to keep it short because there's a lot to get in with that. There absolutely is that approach that defense lawyers take. They're saying you're in this litigation, and if you're experiencing these frustrations or these symptoms, it's not because of the brain injury. It's just because you're simply stressed and going through this litigation. Or, aha, we caught you. You're acting this way because you're trying to lie your way through this, is what the argument is. And that's also false too. That's what they try to argue. There's also a lot of neuropsychological testing that's done. And I've been through a day of doing neuropsych testing.
On yourself?
On myself, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, because so much of what I want to do, that if I'm going to try to argue something or understand the objective science, I want to go through a very true version of like so I've been through and done the testing, and it was like hours long. There's a lot of questions that they'll ask you, and if you answer yes to it, then you get a point for lying or malingering. But then some of the questions that they ask you are also exactly the symptoms that you would have if you're having a brain injury. Like, do you feel feelings of like depression, or do you feel...
Who doesn't?
Yeah. Or do you feel sad? If you answer yes to that, then, and I don't know if this is the exact question that would give you a point for lying, but they're trying to see if you're faking it. But you answer a question that would be, yes, you're faking it, but then that's also a symptom of having a brain injury. And so that's how the defense industry many times tries to set that up to be like, this plaintiff's lying. And they'd be like, okay, these I have lots of feelings about neuropsychological testing, but so much of the testing is set up for failure against the plaintiff. And then there's a whole nother discussion to get into, which we don't probably have the time to get into it, but whether or not the questions are being asked the right way, because it goes back to foundation, which we talked about, in the beginning, that if you're not doing the proper technique with how you're trying to gather evidence, it's going to totally skew the results. And I've won a ton of trials because the other side is just trying to give improper information to the jurors.
I want to add something that I think is very important that a lot of people don't understand. Pretty much in every PI case, when you're claiming injuries, you're going to claim emotional distress as a result of those injuries. And a lot of people don't know that once you claim emotional distress, the defense is entitled to all of your medical records. If you've ever seen a therapist or a psychiatrist or a psychologist in your life, you have to disclose that to the other side, and then they get to see those records. And what I've seen is, and I've had clients go through it because of this, is they go through, years of medical records, therapy records. They find that there are other issues within either childhood traumas or, a sexual assault or issues with their sister, anything in their past that caused emotional distress. And these, independent, quote unquote, medical examiners will say, well, this person has suffered mental health issues throughout their lives, and any emotional distress they're suffering now is attributable to their past traumas and not to what happened here. And a lot of people will talk about plaintiffs like, oh, they're just out to get a buck. It takes courage to be a plaintiff, to open up your records, to open up your life, to open up all of the claims that you're bringing publicly in a civil lawsuit. It's extremely courageous, and they go through a lot to get where they get.
Part of what we do as lawyers is try to educate the client that if they're going to be making the type of emotional injury claim that is going to allow the defense to be able to get into their medical records, to educate the client for that. But you're exactly right that so many times a defense perspective or argument is going to be, it wasn't this crash that caused it, wasn't this incident that caused this issue. It was something that you had 20 or 30 years ago. And so many times, if you had that injury before or that emotional state before, so many times it's already been corrected. And then later on down the road, now it's come back. Mm-hmm. So then it becomes an issue of, what gets attached to what part of your life that you're going through. But part of what we do is, to your point, is making sure that we believe our clients, because if I don't believe something that's happening,
don't take the case.
I wouldn't take the case, or I wouldn't want to express that part of the case. Because if I don't believe something, jurors can figure that out real quick, because I care so much about that. Or if you're going to get into something where you don't believe in it, then you need to have that conversation with the client.
Well, I think the key to this is it has to be substantial cause, the accident, the event that the plaintiff is claiming resulted in those injuries. That must be substantial cause for those injuries. So if you had mental health issues 20 years ago that are documented, and then the accident makes things worse, I think it helps your case. It doesn't hurt it. However, if around the same time when the incident happened, you had sexual assault or something else, and that's in your medical records, then it's going to be harder to prove what's a substantial cause of that mental condition or emotional stress that you are claiming damages for. Then the lawyers may have to agree and stipulate to possibly only pursue, garden variety damages and not everything that you initially thought you could. And
Sure.
Often that doesn't come up until after you get all the medical records and exchange them and see them.
There's a growing trend of professionals, especially in the law, using their creative backgrounds in unexpected ways. Podcasting, social media, even music.
Music has worked very well. There's a song that I'm thinking of that really connects, and here are the lyrics for the jurors just to kind of sit, and the lawyer stops talking. Let's just listen to the music. So music just has a way to set the tone, set a space if you let that happen. I don't want to give the song that I did because I may use it again, but it's lyrically, this song just really lined up with what what the story of the case was, but then also the music is just very expressive, very beautiful. Yeah, and some people like, you sang at trial, and the answer was yeah. This is the creativity part. Like, do I sing it and trust that the jurors know what I'm doing? So that has worked very well.
I think one of the things that article touched on is like how lawyers are using their creativity and expressing it through podcasts and social media and all of these things. And this is really important, I think, because, people, as they grow and develop their careers, they build their brands. And their brand inevitably will be, a result of their innate talents and their creativity. Like for you, your brand is, partly a drummer, a musician. You have so many different complex parts to your character, all of which are beautiful and come together beautifully to make you an outstanding attorney. You want people to see those parts of you. So eventually, when they do get into a car accident or something happens, they're like, I want that drummer attorney. Like, I want that person standing behind me and fighting for my rights. You chase your fire. You truly embody that.
We're in the business of communication, and we've been talking a lot about trials today, but so much of what we do is just educating, just getting information out. And something, Mila, that you do fantastic is, and you do this too, Alona, that is creating information for just the general public to be able to view. And this is a creative part, and this ties in with that article, that, lawyers can do it through like a podcast or through like shorts, or look at where us as a society are right now, where so many people get their information, whether it's right or wrong, on social media. And then and the content keeps getting shorter and shorter of what are we expressing. So then how do you give people a concept in a way that has some entertainment value, that's fun to watch, that's going to get shared, but is also quality information. Right. And that comes part of like, well, how do you be creative with what you're doing, but then still give, legit, credible information as a lawyer?
So it seems like everything you do, you just put your heart and soul into it. You're very passionate. You learn the mechanics of every aspect of the case before going into it, so that when you're talking to a jury, there's no BS, because you know exactly what happened and every detail of it. And I'm sure your clients feel that not only do they have an attorney fighting for them, but someone who truly cares about their case. Talk to us a little bit about that. I'm sure you've gotten a lot of feedback in that regard.
The answer is yes. I do care a lot about this. I care about getting accurate, objective information. So for example, like trucking, like I'm signing up to do like the trucking training to get like the Class A, Class B certification. And so I want to be able to say, I've been through these classes. I know what they're supposed to be teaching at these courses. And if the defendant driver, truck driver, or if the defendant truck driving company, if they're not training their employees the right way, I want to know what should they have known that they're not doing that then caused this wreck that, killed a family of 4, and if it's someone that really needs a lawyer that's going to be able to express that, to have been in that seat, either in the driver's seat literally of a truck, or in the driver's seat of like the classroom setting, to know what it takes to be able to go through the weeks, months, or whatever of training to understand that. That means that's very important to me, so that I can then truly express all sides of the story and to be able to tell the client's story. Part of the client's story is, what should the defendant's company have known to do to stop this crash from happening? Yeah. It's important to be able to hold someone accountable, so that hopefully we're stopping that from happening again. Well, this has been a pleasure. Thank you both for letting. I feel so good that I got to sit next to. I wanted the pink pillow. I was forced to have the red pillow. But this has been great. I love what you're doing here, and this is really fun to be a part of this.
Today's glam tip: don't hide your edge. Redefine it. Your uniqueness is your power.
And don't be afraid to make noise in unexpected places. Whether you are in a courtroom or a club, you belong there. Eric, you're proof that being brilliant and being yourself aren't mutually exclusive.
If you've been waiting for permission to pivot, this is it.
This is a glamorous grind where ambition plays loud and reinvention is always in style.
We'll see you next week.